Now, climate change is actually one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue, facing the world right now. On a scale, or I should say on a ranking, it ranks number one, following with money in politics following second. So these are very important issues, right? So you would think that an important issue such as climate change would actually have more debate time. Well, it doesn't, and the reason is not going to shock you. Now, earlier this year, speaking of the primary, and I know we got this big debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. I doubt we're going to see climate change questions in it. And here are some of the reasons. But before I get to the reasons, I want to point out that in a Media Matters study, they asked the 14,000 questions asked during the first 20 months or 20 debates of this year's primary season, and found that only 22 or 1.5% of the questions actually covered climate. Now, that is not a big number. That's a very, very small. 22 out of nearly 1,500 questions had to do with climate change. In all the debates. Man. Now, Sean Otto, co-founder of Science Debate, said, look, man, that's really malfeasance on the part of our fourth estate. I couldn't agree more. Now, why? Well, Grist actually asked him and said, hey, look, why don't you actually talk about climate change? Why don't you ask more climate change questions? He actually asked these moderators. Now, a lot of them declined to answer. No, we're not interested in talking about this. We're not interested in talking to you about this question. Not to mention, we're not interested in just talking about climate change in general. The most important issue facing mankind. Don't want to talk about it. Okay, well, of the ones who did answer and talk to Grist, they said this. And they said, look, debate questions are made up by two different points, right? Now, these elements are basically, it exposes differences for undecided voters. That's what makes up a good debate question. But secondly, and this is where it's important, this is where it pisses me off, it makes for dramatic television. Dramatic television. Well, wait a minute. This is talking about an actual issue, an actual dramatic issue that can be the cause of all sorts of different things. Now, a lot of people laughed when Martin O'Malley said the Syrian civil war was partly caused by climate change. They laughed at him. They laughed. Oh, Martin O'Malley, you lib. What are you doing? Talking about this, climate change. No, it's obviously they're just terrorists. No, there's truth in that. Climate change is considered one of the most important issues, even by the Pentagon. The Pentagon, they're not a bunch of left-wing environmentalists. Okay, it's the fucking Pentagon. And they say climate change is a huge issue. But we can't talk about it on TV because it's not dramatic enough. Now, Scott Spradling, who was a former anchor of New Hampshire's WMUR, talked to Grist. And by the way, this guy participated in 4 2008 primary debates, so he was there. Okay, he said, look, the exercise was always trying to draw differences in the candidates. Allow there to be opportunities to clearly state positions by the candidates, but also draw out distinctions so voters can be educated on where they differ. Okay, look, if you're trying to set up a debate question with that in mind, I don't have any issue with it. But once again, we go back to the dramatic TV angle. Los Angeles Times columnist Doyle McManus, who moderated primary debates in 2000-2008, said the second biggest goal, to put it as crassly as possible, is to produce a good television show. And this is what's wrong with our debates. This is exactly what's wrong. You want to produce a good TV show? No, that's not your job. Your job is to get the electorate informed. That's what these debates are supposed to be, but now we've turned it into a PR machine. We've turned this into, a way to get ratings. for our respective channels. That's what we've turned this into. This is not the way things are supposed to be. And when it comes to issues, apparently climate change is not sexy. So they don't want to ask about it. They don't want them to talk about it. It's the same issue with money in politics. Although that would have a conflict of interest because these TV companies make millions and millions of dollars off selling ads. Now, related to that, right? This is also to protect their source of revenue. And thanks to Citizens United, these TV companies are making bank off these ads. They're making bank off political ads. That's how it relates to Citizens United. But look, let me give you an example. Okay, you want to turn on MSNBC. You want to watch Rachel or whatever, right? What do you see? Nothing but fossil fuel ads. How fracking is so awesome and so clean and so wonderful and so safe. You turn on Fox News and you see ads for things like, I don't know, Viagra. But you also see those oil and gas ads. They're protecting their sources of income and protecting their advertising dollar. It all comes down to advertising. It all comes down to money. And that's the very problem that we have with corporate media, is that it is a corporation and that its only goal is to make money. That's why we abandon corporate media. That's why we start new media, but we're still running into that same issue. That now people can't make money off of YouTube. But that's that's a separate issue. Now, let's see. Tom Fahey, right? I don't know if I'm saying that. A former New Hampshire union leader reporter who worked on 2 presidential primary debates said, quote, "For climate change, it doesn't grab viewers the same way other stuff does. Bombing in New York, terror, immigration. And he says, as far as people who are watching, this kind of stuff grabs Joe Sixpack, the regular dude sitting in his home. But climate change doesn't. Yeah, but it could if you actually expose the facts. You need to start scaring the shit out of people when it comes to climate change. How climate change leads to more terrorism because of migrations. Look, you got a problem with immigration? You got a problem with people becoming refugees? Maybe you should start worrying about the fucking climate first. But no, not going to do that. Because that takes work. That actually takes journalism to do. We're not going to do that. We're not interested in that. And plus, we want to make sure we get enough money from our sponsors, the oil and gas industry. Now, this bothers me immensely. And it should. It should bother you immensely. How we don't have good moderators. How we don't have climate change questions. I mean, when Bernie Sanders was going through the primary, he was like, hey, let's bring up climate change. Hey, can we talk about climate change just real quick here? And so you've got to force that into the conversation. The same thing with money in politics. Because they don't want to talk about it. And see, that's the bad thing. And look, it's not because the American people don't care about it, right? In fact, there's an August poll that showed that 65% of adults want the government to actually act on climate change domestically and abroad. And there's a July analysis from Yale and George Mason University that showed the highest percentage of Americans alarmed by climate change since 2008. But there also is a giant divide between climate voters and climate deniers. Once again, I think that's partly the fault of the media. By not actually talking about this. By trying to give the illusion of balance. You've got a false equivalency. Environmentalist says this, climate denier says that. What? They must be even. The science must be even. It must not know. That's the claim that they make all the time. Well, the science isn't in. No, it's in, motherfucker. Climate change is real. It is man-made, and we got to fucking do something before it before the fucking world burns. And it's already starting to. Record temperatures every month. The one month hotter than the next month. And it's going to keep going, and it's going to keep rolling. That pot is going to continue to boil. And we're sitting in it. And we're screaming, hey, do something about it. Do something. And they ignore us. What should be the centerpiece of this debate, the debate tonight and debates to come, climate change, is not central. It's cast by the wayside. And that's sad. And that's incredibly unproductive, and it's incredibly short-sighted. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent, non-corporate media, go to our Patreon page and become a patron. Patreon.com/TYTNation.